my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Oh, well, they gave me bars, but I can see between to a dusty yard and long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I drive my sorrow.
Hello everybody, welcome to Longbangers, Shortbangers episode 3. No Brian tonight, he's jaked out his face in the pub. So I've got Craig and John with me. How you doing, guys?
Rubbish.
Tell us why you're rubbish, Craig. And you need to be quick.
Because some old bint came out on her motor, just about crashed into me, caused me to take my wing mirror off and fail an MOT when I was on the way to the centre.
Probably what time crash your car, eh?
Hope she has a cold winter.
John, how are you doing?
I'm doing good because I had burgers for tea.
Did you
Plural.
or
No, sorry, singular, just the one. But
We've got you out there, chunky.
Well, I'm on a diet, you see, because I keep getting a lot of stick on this podcast.
And rightly so. Right, Shortbangers, the usual rules apply. We've got 20 minutes. We've got questions from listeners or people who at least follow us on Twitter. And in my case, my parents as well. So 20 minutes to answer them. We'll get through as many as we can. And at the end of the time, that's it. No more. So first question, and we'll start off with one from my dad. Let me just get the timer started. Right.
What time are you going to be home for your tea? Oh, next one.
Mind the phone if you're going to be out late. Just want to know you're safe, Matthew.
Right, what ground is the least comfortable and why?
Kilmarnock Rugby Park, because the seats are so narrow together, and I don't even think it's because I'm 6'5". I think anyone that's about 5'10" would struggle in there. Shin bruisers.
Is it Parkhead because you're behind a pillar? No matter.
I'm going to go outside of Scotland and say Torquay down south, because as soon as the team comes out, you get plastered with newspaper cutouts.
So, what's the story with that?
I went to see Mansfield at Torquay, and it's like a small.
I've always wanted to go to.
Oh yeah, it was massive, eh? But no, it's like a wee terrace, and whenever the team comes out, there's a load of local fans that obviously spend the week cutting up loads of old newspaper, and see for like confetti, they chuck boxes of it, and you get absolutely covered in it.
Oh, fuck that!
Aye, it's proper Wurzel type stuff.
Wurzel. Can you tell us about any incidents with the police at a football match?
I went to see Scotland, Spain. Was it the 3-2 game where we scored just before or just after half time? Made it 2-1, maybe 2-2. Me and my mates went in, and 10 minutes in, the police came up to us. We realised that one of our mates was gone, and he was thrown out for pissing up the back of Hampden. Like, not in the toilet or anything, just up, the big kind of, is it a concourse? The big walkway? I just stood there with his cock out, pissing everywhere.
John?
Years ago, still in the old terrace in the Easter Road, I've gone in, it was Hibs against Rangers, and I spotted a friend of mine who was working as a policewoman at the day, so I wandered over, had a chat with her, went back to my seat afterwards, and there was a boy there that had a special bottle of Lucozade. He says to me, "Do you want a drink of this?" I went, "Aye, sure."
That's not the right answer.
So
I've got a special bottle of Lucozade. Didn't drink it. That's my advice. Yeah.
So I had a wee sniff, and I went, "What the fuck's in that?" And he says, "Oh, it's cannabis seeds and absinthe." So I had a wee mouthful, and right enough, like, it blew the heat off me. So, I handed the bottle back to him, and then at half time, I think Hibs had maybe gone.
Glasgow.
At half time, I think I've maybe had a wee look over. I think Hibs are maybe 1-0 up at the time, and I've looked over at this boy at half time, and he has sparkled across like the benches. So I get in touch with my policewoman friend after the game, and I ask her, like, what the hell happened to that boy? Because I saw her lifting him out. He says he was just absolutely buckled. Couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. He'd pissed and shat himself in the cells. So they had to take him to the hospital. And I think she was present at the time, and the nurse there began him like a wee sort of slap around the face to try and wake him up. And he's woke up and he's went, "Where am I?" And they went, "You're in the hospital." He went, "All right, sound," and just crashed back out again.
Happy days. I mean, going to East End Park. I don't know if you'll remember the goal. Zamama scored an absolute, I'm sure it was Zamama that scored it. He might have set it up. My memories know what it used to be, but there was like an outrageous bit of skill for Zamama right into that era, and we scored. Sure, it was quite a late goal as well. But there'd been a boy up the back of the way end where we were, who had been getting dealt off by a steward for standing up. They'd been up to him about 3 or 4 times, and eventually they get the police to come up with him. And the policeman's pleaded with this guy, sat down. Eventually he's agreed to do it, sat down, and as the policeman and the steward turned around to walk back down the stairs, just hear somebody shouting, "Stand up if you hate the Hearts." And then everybody's up, and the policeman just turns around and shakes his head. It was quality. You couldn't get better timing from it. Right, next question. This is for High Bees Alan. Right, pick one player from each of the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties and 10s. Then who would you put in our current team? Who wants to go first for that one? So I'm going to struggle with the 70s because, look, I was born 77. I didn't see Hibs in the 70s.
Aye, well, I wasn't born till 82, so I'm struggling as well. But at least I did a bit of research and found the name.
I wasn't born till 91, for Christ. I'm done in.
Right, I'll go first then. So
you researched and you can go for it.
1970s, I've got Eric Shadler. 1980s, I've got John Collins. 1990s, I've got Pat McGinley. The 2000s, I've got Chris Killen. And the 10s, I've got Conrad Logan.
Decent. So 80s, I'll go Archibald, who I think was late 80s. He was the first player that I've been watching. I just adored him. Steve Archibald, what a player. 90s, Mickey Weir. 2000s, Soze. 10s, McGinn. And out of them, Soze will be put in the team just because he's a god. Craig?
90s, Stevie Crawford. 2000s. Oh, God. Yeah, it's got to be Frank, innit? Frank. And 2010s, I would go for the polar bear as well. And I would probably put the polar bear in the team. Just for morale. He doesn't have to play. I just want to see him sitting scranning pies.
Just scranning pies at the side of the pitch like that boy in the FA Cup.
Yeah. Every so often giving some boy on the pad abuse.
There's apparently a story about Conrad Logan just after he signed. So it might have been after the Dundee United game. And obviously there was a reaction. Everybody talked about the size of him. And I think it was his birthday around about that time. And the tradition at Easter Road is whoever's birthday it is has to bring in the cakes for the team at training. And they had a reporter, I think the TV reporters were wanting to come up and do a feature on him. And I think they pretty much could tell, just know the day, because having already had all the comments about his weight and everything, if they did it with him strolling into East Mains with 2 tubs of cakes or whatever, it just wouldn't have looked good. So they put it off.
Class. And he actually ended up going and playing for Mansfield, who I'd went down to see at Torquay. Conrad, what a man.
That guy, yeah, the polar bear. Right, Steve McMahon asked, how did you all end up Hibs fans in the first place?
John?
For me, it was my dad. He was born and brought up in Leith, and I think his dad and so on and so forth were Hibs fans before him. So it was just sort of handed down to me. Took me to my first game, and I just kind of took up the torch a few years later when I was able to go under my own steam. Never looked back.
I am kind of the same. My dad's parents are from down south, but they moved up to Edinburgh in the 50s, I think. They never really followed the football. He was born Tay Street, I think, actually in the flat. And I think the story goes, he used to go and watch Hibs and Hearts, just whoever he could get into for free when he was a young boy. His family weren't football followers, but luckily his neighbour was a massive Hibs fan and used to drive the van down. I think his boy, my dad, my granddad used to play dominoes in the back. That's how long ago it was, on the way to the game. And I just, pushed me into it. I've always been brought up on the West Coast supporting Hibs, so it's been difficult. I think my first game actually was at Ibrox, believe it or not. I think, was it a cup game that was meant to be at Hampden, perhaps? I think my dad was, I can't remember, I was smally, but my dad said all I remember about it was I'd fallen asleep in his lap because I was a young boy at the time. And I don't know if Hibs had scored or they'd nearly scored, but my dad jumped up like celebrating or whatever, and I went literally flying down the stairs. So all I remember from my first game was getting picked up by some randomer on the stairs, like, "Are you all right? Where the bloody hell am I?" That's it.
At least there was no lasting damage, yeah.
At least they never nicked me.
Well, my old man was, well, as a Hibs fan. I grew up Livingston when I was really wee, and in Whitburn for a while. And Whitburn's like a Rangers stronghold. So it was me and my pal Darren that were Hibs fans. And then, so actually, I think the first professional game that I went to, I think, was in the Rangers end for Motherwell against Rangers. We'd supposed to been taking the Hibs game a couple of weeks before, but my old man done his back in, and his pal Hugh, who's a Celtic fan, because they how we ended up with tickets for the Rangers end anyway, came in. I had 3 tickets, so that was the first game I went to. Graham Roberts scored for Rangers. They won 1-0. And I think then my first Hibs game was against Dundee at Easter Road. I think that was 2 each. Didn't really remember it too much. My man and uncle, they were mad Hibbies, and they used to take me in the North Stand with them. And my cousins would take me to games now and again as well. So, that's it. That's how I became a Hibs fan. It was good. Wouldn't change it.
Never.
Right, Pride of Edinburgh. Is Europe a possibility? And if we get to Europe, how far would we get? I'll go with Wales.
Depends if you've got a blue passport or not, doesn't it?
I think further south you can go Cyprus, but for a wee bit exotica you can maybe go for the Baltic states or the Ural Mountains in the northeast. That's as far as Europe goes.
Check with the group stages. Are we good enough for the group stages of Europe now?
With a couple of players and maybe another season under our belts, aye. But that's the optimist in me talking again.
I think we'd probably need all 11 players for that job. I think if we just went out with a couple, we'd be fucked.
Fair dues.
Right, Mikey's asked, do you prefer Dumby Dykes or Gilmot and Dykes?
Pass. Don't know what he's talking about.
What about a dry stone dyke? Nah, no takers, any other kind of... We'll stop there.
I don't know what you're getting at, Matthew.
No, neither do I. Right, Neil Whelan, do Hibs have an issue with playing players in their best positions? So, but the inference there is that we've got players playing out of position at the moment. So who's been played out of position this season?
John.
I don't know. I was just about to undo my rant for Longbangers by saying Scott Allen, but that's probably, if I was to pick anyone at the moment, I'd say Joe Newell, because I think he's maybe wasted at that slight sort of old-fashioned inside left position. As much as I think he's doing a good job there, I think he's got a bit more to offer going forward.
Is there a wee bit of an obsession with this kind of thing, though, Craig? Like, I saw there was a thread on .net earlier on about Lewis Stevenson perhaps going in as cover for Gogic. Do we get hung up on trying to kind of put square pegs into round holes? That's not a question about your personal life.
Bugger. Do you know what? I couldn't care less.
Fair dues.
Move on.
Mike Lennon played Lewis Stevenson the centre half at Ibrox and we won. That's one of my favourite ever games. Imagine
was that the game he scored?
No, that was the game that I think McLaren scored the penalty. Maybe
McLaren scored the penalty. Who scored the first one in that game for us? Scott Allen. He scored it.
McGinn.
McGinn.
Long
right,
range.
Next. We need a buzzer.
We do a ping. Right. Neil Whelan also asked, if I set up a barbecue outside the West Stand, what percentage would want onions on their burgers?
Nobody from the West Stand is having burgers at the game, are they?
Well,
they're having the finest Waitrose sourdough rye bread prawn sandwiches
with no onions.
What about
onions?
Wagyu? But what about Wagyu beef and shallots? I think that takes the percentage.
It wouldn't be called a burger, though, would it? They'd have some other name for it.
Right, give us a figure. Give us a figure. What percentage?
15%.
15%. Craig?
2.
2%. I'll go for 83%, and we'll no charge for that little bit of market research there. Jamie
Sure you're
Montgomery asked, why do Hibs fans want to get average players back to the club and feel sorry for average players when they leave? Being a good guy doesn't win football matches. So do we have a...
That's more of a great point than a question. Move on.
First bit's a question.
You're right.
Some good guys win football matches.
I don't know. There seems to be a hangover of people feeling like we owe players in a weird way, or players could come in and do a job. I don't want players to come in and do a job per se. I'd much rather, we move on. Players. I mean, there's a difference between the likes of a Greg Docherty coming in on loan and being the kind of player that we need, and then going back to his parent club, and somebody like, I don't know, Simon Murray playing for Hibs, gets on with the fans and that's brilliant. But, if he's offered himself up to Hibs, like I think he probably would have done, and Jack Ross is the manager that I believe in, has looked at him and thought, you're not good enough. Why do the fans keep screaming out for him? If Jack Ross doesn't believe it, then, bit of belief. Move on. Find somebody else.
Is there an average player, John, that you would like to see come back?
Ross Chisholm.
For his famous pointing skills?
Yes. If there is anyone that is more average than Ross Chisholm, I'd like to know, because I'd like them back too.
Apart from Conrad, he can come back. Pie master.
He was above average in many ways.
Right, WTC 1981. What's your favourite away ground and why?
Newquay, because the fans are absolutely batshit mental. Again, I went with my mate, Pusser, the big Mansfield fan. We drove up from Plymouth. We broke down on the M5 on the overtaking lane. I pushed the car over 3 lanes of the motorway. We fixed it, got to Newquay. We were a bit stressed by this point, and we were walking to the ground, and I saw, couldn't have been any older than 10 years old, a young boy with his dad, walk up to a fat, bald Mansfield fan, and the exact words that came out of his mouth, and excuse the accent, was, "Here, bud, you're that fat and that bald. you look like you've got fucking leukemia." And walked away, and his dad was like, "Well done, son. Well done."
Well done.
Next,
John. Favourite away ground?
I don't know. I'm going to say somewhere like Palmerston Park, Queen of the South, just because it's still got that feel of an old-fashioned football stadium. And when Hibs played there years ago under John Collins, there was a wee part of me that wanted to be behind the goals when Queen of the South scored, because it looked like as close to East Stand mayhem at Easter Road as you're likely to get. It looked great.
Fair enough. I was going to go for the Tony Macaroni because of the quality of the pitch, and then I thought nobody's going to buy that because it's shite there. So I'll go with East End Park just because it's on the doorstep. Not literally, obviously, but walking distance for the house, and you get
can I
quality
also
pie.
make a quick public apology to all Welsh people?
Oh, was it Welsh you were doing?
Oh, it was chronic, eh?
Not for people who might currently be suffering from leukemia, just the Welsh.
He was only quoted. He wasn't slagging anybody off.
I'm just passing on the message. I never came out with the sentiment.
I'm not here to judge.
Right, next question. Jones28 said, who do you guys think is the players to come in and back up the midfield? Would it be a McCrory, McGinn type, or someone with different qualities? And then what does the team look like after they come in?
What about the mascot for Partick Thistle?
Kingsley.
He could come in, because I tell you what, he looks like a fucking horror show. But
providing a bit of spark in midfield.
I was thinking more along the lines of, the kind of size of him and all these balls that we seem to be missing through the midfield. He'd maybe be able to kind of, I don't know, shoulder them down or that and scare a few people on the way. Him and Gogic, man, they'd be terrifying too, wouldn't they?
The obvious answer is to get Matty Jack out of retirement and put him in there.
So
We've been
was
crying
Matty-
out for a Matty Jack type for years. Let's just fucking get Matty Jack back.
Is Matty Jack one of these average players that folk Longford just because he was good at the defensive midfield bit? Or is
Aye.
that sacrilege?
I'm going to say yes, but I'll have mates giving it the sacrilege chat. In fact, I might have to lock my door because they'll come in and batter me.
Always like Matty Jack, just I like players like him and Claros and like your Bartleys and everything. I like a player like that. We need a box to box, so that player that could take the ball from the edge off the centre halves and take it forward and get us out of trouble. See, McGeoch used to be brilliant at that. Can we talk about players that used to that aren't with us anymore? Like Hibs, he's no deed.
He's alive.
McGeoch was brilliant at knowing when to speed the game up and when to slow it down, when to just take the ball in a wee run or when to lay it off and just play the pass. We need somebody with that sort of football brain. I think more than you need the energy or whatever, we need somebody really kind of clever on the ball.
McGeoch's brain, McGinley's legs, John O'Neill's running. McGinn's arse, aye, and you've got your perfect football player.
Kingsley's heat.
Kingsley's heat, aye.
Right, I think we maybe got time for one more question. And what Hibs memorabilia do you have? So we kind of had a question like this before, but it came up, and John, you've just got some new stuff in. So tell us about your new memorabilia.
Well, for anyone new that's listened that's not heard me talk about it before, I came into possession of a
You're out
seat
of time, sorry.
well,
No, finish it. That's a rolling clear.
No, cut it there, that's right.
Finish
Tune in next time.
Started to a finish.
He's raging, right? Thanks all for listening.
Are you telling us about it?
No, spin it. I'm happy.
We'll get it next time. I think I have to turn this timer off on my phone. It just keeps going. Right. Thanks everybody for listening. That was Shortbangers episode 3. Hope you enjoyed it, and tune in next week for episode 4, and we'll maybe be back on Tuesday with a proper Longbangers one, depending on whether or not we can be arsed when there's no Hibs game. So until next time, catch you later on. John, Craig, thanks for coming on. Cheers.
Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee.